Hey family, it's Uncle Brian here once again. I have a quick little break working on the computer right now, so I decided to make a quick video about a topic that came across my mind the other day. Um, I recently just spoke to a family member of mine who lives out of state, and I'm in California. He's in a different state, Washington, Seattle, Washington, like that. And we were talking for 10, 15 minutes. And what I realized he was doing in this conversation between two family members was he was constantly pitching me ideas for things and trying to sell me on things. I said, hey, dude, you don't have to sell me on what you want to do if you come out here to California. You don't have to sell me on things that I can do if I go back out there to Seattle. And so he kept asking me, I'm not trying to sell you on anything. I said, cousin, I've been in sales too. You cannot turn off your sales personality for the life of you. Really, it was kind of absurd to me. Like, hey, like we're just kicking back on the phone talking about what we want to do when we see each other, and it's as if you still trying to sell me on something when there's nothing to sell. You could recommend places for sure, and I would love that. Yeah, let's go hit up a Brazilian steakhouse or something out there, out here. It doesn't really matter, but it really dawned on me that my cousin in Washington is such a salesman, he cannot turn off his sales personality at all. And I was thinking back on all these years, like, dude, you've had a lot of problems with personal relationships with other people, friends, significant others. And I think a lot of those times, the worser outcomes came because you couldn't turn off your personality. And it kind of dawned on him that he thinks that I was right. So I wanted to make a quick video about how people can't turn off their sales personality to their own detriment. One thing that really sucks when you're talking to a salesman who cannot turn off their salesman personality is that they constantly try to win a conversation. It's sometimes overly persuasive when you absolutely don't have to be. You could just recommend, like, hey, maybe we should go over here. You don't have to give me, a PowerPoint, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bullet points about why we should go to this spot other than compared to other ones. It's sometimes it's a little too persuasive in a personal conversation. And sometimes that gets in the way of, like, just having an ordinary conversation between people. I find myself I feel like I'm not heard when I'm talking to salesmen. I'm a salesman myself sometimes. When I'm talking to people who are salesmen, I find that they're not listening to what I'm saying. They're kind of just listening for objections that they need to overcome. And that's sales 101, basically. You have to overcome objections. If I'm asking you to do something for me and you tell me no, as a salesman, a great salesman, we actually like to find that no, 100 no's so that we can find that one yes. So aggressive salesmen sometimes come off as very manipulative, and they don't tend to listen to what you have to say. They're just overcoming objections. And I find that I don't feel like my words are actually being registered to the person I'm talking to. And that really kind of sucks for people who do that all the time. They're more of listening to respond rather than listening to understand. And that kind of creates more of a disconnect more than anything. And the top salesmen, they're very charismatic and very aggressive. And sometimes that charisma is kind of looked at as disingenuous sometimes. The best salesmen are manipulative. They'll try anything to manipulate the situation to almost close the deal. In a personal conversation, that is kind of annoying sometimes. I can't even talk to my own cousin about certain things without him just saying, like, hey man, we got to do this and that because of X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3. It's overwhelming. he has been in sales for much longer than me. Sometimes I just give in because I don't have enough to fight anymore with these mental gymnastics. Eventually, I just say, cousin, I guess we're gonna go to California Fish Grill instead of Ono Hawaiian Barbecue because you want to do so. It's like that sometimes. But what I'm here to do is kind of let you guys know that for the salesmen out there, this is really a video for you. You're gonna have to turn that off eventually. As soon as the clock it's time to punch out the clock, like sometimes you just can't take that with you back to your house or your personal conversations with your friends. And the reason why my cousin out there in Washington, he has such a hard time having regular conversations with people is because he can't turn that thing off. Every time he talks to a friend, it's always a sales pitch about what he or they should do. A lot of them would conversate about how this as a group, if it's a group setting, you know, like, hey, let's all go over here. Well, ding, this person might just say, no, we shouldn't do that because XYZ, 1, 2, 3, bullet points, bam, bam, bam. It's sometimes very, very annoying. But as a salesperson, you definitely will have to turn that off eventually for the sake of your own family and your friends. And if you can't, then maybe the salesman life was very much meant for you to become a sales robot. And that life right there, which I do know a few people like that, it's sales over everything else, kind of like money over everything. It does create a very, very toxic mind frame for people to live in. I've noticed that some of my friends who are very successful in their careers in sales, they sometimes do have a very hard time holding down a relationship with their significant other. I've never really thought about things like that. I kind of just stay away from people's personal relationships. But as an example for me, using my family member that lives out in a different state, he is a prime example of how a salesman pretty much destroy their personal relationships, just not being able to just turn off their salesman persona. Not everything needs to be a pitch. You don't have to win every single conversation. You don't have to look at somebody and say, I'm going to close this deal. If you give me any type of objections, I will defeat those objections until I will manipulate them to the close. That's something you do over the phone or when you're trying to sell a car. You don't do that to personal family members or people you care about. Unless they could, you know, kind of reciprocate that, which I can't reciprocate that with people. You know, real estate, mortgage, car sales. I've kind of done some of those things, so I could reciprocate that. But not everybody's like that. There's more people in this world who aren't like that. And I actually made a video earlier about something like that. Being able to talk to people in their language doesn't really mean like you and I can speak English or you can speak a different language and I can also. It's just more finding a middle ground. Salesmen who cannot turn off their sales persona don't really have a middle ground to find with people. And that's one of the really, really hard things that a lot of people will have to learn eventually. One of the worst things, in my opinion, that you could do with your sales persona is bringing that into your personal relationships where it becomes almost transactional, almost conditional, right? I only do things for you because I expect things from you. That creates a very unhappy environment. It might not happen right away in the early stages, the honeymoon phase, but in my opinion, further down the line, it does produce a lot of problems. You know, it's like WIFM, WIFM. What's in it for me? If you constantly think of that type of ideology in your personal relationships, I don't believe in my heart that there's a really good outcome from that in a personal relationship. Things sometimes can be 50-50, 60-40, 100, 0. To make it transactional means if you can't produce on your end, the other person shouldn't have to produce on their end too. I think that's just a terrible way of looking at relationships. And that's one of the main reasons why I think in America that relationships aren't working anymore, actually. So it kind of bleeds onto your personal relationships sometimes. So you salesmen out there, just turn it off and turn into a regular loving person at the end of the day. Because, work is work, but life is life also. So for the new people out there just jumping into the workforce, doing their very first sales job, it is very important to know that to become a top salesman, that character trait of being very pushy and aggressive, that will be there. You will have to hone that skill to become a top salesman. You just have to. But also, don't let that get in the way of your personal relationships. I've known some of my personal friends who are very successful in their careers, but they fall very short in their personal relationships with family and other people. So it is very important to find that balance. And that might be the theme of my entire YouTube channel career right now, is actually it's more finding that balance between everything. Because if you work too much, you won't have much of a home to go to, you can have a huge house, but if it's empty because people can't stand you, is it really a happy home? So that's one of the main things that I really wanted to get across in this video, is that yes, you will need to become a sales tycoon to make a lot of money, get that house that you always wanted, provide, a great setting for a family. But you also need to find that balance to where you don't push people away on your journey to success. And I hope you guys really like this video. This topic actually hits me in the heart because I have family members who fit that description. I don't know if they'll ever be happy with their life. Their life is just chasing the bag, essentially. And there's nothing wrong with that, of wanting more out of life. But in my personal opinion, life is really more of the interaction and connection with people. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. I love making quick videos like this. Anything that helps people like me, younger millennials, Gen Z, definitely Gen Z people. I feel as if they do need a little bit more advice how to navigate through this professional world that we live in. I've been hearing a lot of videos and content on the internet about how a lot of Gen Zs they're not succeeding in their field. They all want jobs, but they're not really succeeding. So I hope advice like this it gets out there a lot more. I'm gonna keep making videos like this if you enjoy this. So I'll see you guys next time.